It started with a knock. Not loud, not urgent, just steady, like someone who wasn't in a rush. Knock. 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 At first, I didn't move. I just sat there on the couch, half watching a movie I wasn't even paying attention to, letting the sound hang in the air like a stray thought. Sometimes old pipes groan, sometimes the wind plays tricks. But this was different. I looked at the clock on the wall. 11:42 p.m. Not exactly a friendly hour. We live on a dead-end street, out by the woods. Half the houses are seasonal, empty most of the year. No one just shows up this late out here, not unless something's wrong. And even then, they call first. That's just the kind of place this is. I paused the movie and muted the TV. Scout, my black lab, was asleep near the fireplace. He raised his head slowly, ears up. Then he let out this unsettled growl. Not barking, just enough to say, "Something's not right, boss." I stood up quietly. Didn't turn on the porch light. Didn't want to signal anything yet. Instead, I walked to the front door and leaned in. I held my breath. Silence. Then again, knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks again. Same exact rhythm, same pause between each one, like it had been practiced, rehearsed. I glanced at Scout. His hackles were up now. I slowly moved toward the door and looked through the peephole. A man was standing there. Hood up, face shadowed. He wasn't pacing, wasn't looking around. He was just still, standing, staring directly at the door, like he knew I was there on the other side. I cleared my throat and tried to sound steady. "Can I help you?" I said, loud enough to be heard. There was a pause. Then he said, "Hey man, my car broke down, just a couple houses down. My phone's dead. Can I come in and use yours?" His voice was calm, not desperate, not worried, just casual, too casual. I narrowed my eyes and asked, "Where exactly?" Another pause. "Just, right down the hill." That's when it clicked. There is no hill. Our street is flat, for miles. I felt something shift in my gut. "No, sorry," I said. "Can't help you." He didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't leave. Just stood there. And then, he said something that made my skin crawl. "Come on, Jasper, you know me." He used my first name. I froze. It was like a knife slid into my spine. He said it like it was normal, like we were old friends, like this was some kind of game. "I don't know you," I said, voice barely coming out. And then he laughed. Low, soft, not mocking, more like he was in on some private joke. Then he turned, walked down the porch steps like nothing was wrong. For a second, I just stood there. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe I did know him and just couldn't place the voice. Maybe. Click. The motion light in the backyard turned on. I turned toward the kitchen window. 2 figures were moving behind the shed. One of them was carrying something long. A crowbar, I think. That's when it hit me. He was a distraction. I slammed the deadbolt, ran to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and called 911. Told them my address, the situation, the fact that they knew my name. The dispatcher told me to stay where I was. Locked the door. Help was 10 minutes out. 10 minutes. I turned off every light in the house and dropped down behind the bed. Scout followed me, trembling. That's when I heard it. Glass shattering. Back window. Kitchen or living room. I couldn't tell. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Across the tile. They weren't rushing. They were taking their time. I could hear them whispering. Laughing. Not like they were nervous. Like they were having fun. They weren't here to rob me. They were here for me. The dispatcher kept asking if I was okay, if I could hide somewhere better, if I had a weapon. I barely answered. Then, knock, knock, knock on the bedroom door. My heart almost stopped. A voice said, "Open up, Jasper. We just want to talk." I felt like I was drowning. How did they know my name, my house, my bedroom? Then I remembered. The jogs I took every morning, same time, same route. The pictures I posted. The doorbell camera that had been broken for a week. That feeling I've had for days, like I was being watched. They had been studying me. The doorknob jiggled. I looked around the room. No bat, no knife. I grabbed the only thing I could, a heavy metal lamp. I stood up, raised it over my shoulder, then, boom! The front door slammed open. "Sheriff's Department, hands where we can see them." Footsteps thundered, shouting, a crash, a scream, then more yelling, and then silence. I didn't move. It wasn't until a deputy gently opened the bedroom door and said, "You're safe now," that I finally let go of the lamp. They called all three. One outside, two more trying to climb out the broken back window. None of them were local, all in their 20s. One had a hunting knife. The one from the porch had a burner phone with my address and full name in the notes app. They never said how they got it. Never said what they were planning. One of the officers told me something I'll never forget. He said, "We've seen this before. They pick houses, watch them, for weeks, sometimes months. They learn routines, weak spots. They look for homes that feel too safe." It's been a year. I've got cameras now, better locks, steel reinforced doors. I stopped posting online. I stopped running the same route. But even now, even with all of that, sometimes, usually around midnight, I swear, I hear it at the front door. Knock, knock, knock. Always three. It started like any other night. I'd just gotten home from work around 9:30. I kicked off my boots, locked the door behind me, and did my usual routine. Checked the back door, made sure the windows were shut, and armed the alarm. Standard stuff. I live alone, and I've always been the type to double and triple check everything before bed. I'm not paranoid, just careful. Especially since the break-in 3 years ago. They didn't take much, but they took my peace of mind. Ever since then, I've had a top-tier security system. Keypad by the front and back doors, motion sensors, camera notifications to my phone. Nothing happens without me knowing about it. That night, everything seemed normal. I made a quick dinner, fed the cat, then parked myself on the couch to unwind. It was a little after 10:15 when I started to doze off. I woke up maybe 20 minutes later, not to a sound exactly, more like a feeling. That kind of instinct you can't explain. Like your body knows something's wrong before your brain catches up. I sat up, looked around. Silence. Then I noticed something weird. The alarm panel near the door wasn't lit up anymore. Normally it glows green when the system is armed, red if there's a breach, but now it was just dark. I got up and walked over to it. Tried tapping the screen. Nothing. Checked my phone to see the camera feeds. Offline. Now that was impossible. It's all hardwired, not just Wi-Fi. No power outages. No storms. I hadn't touched the thing. My stomach dropped. I backed into the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife from the drawer, the one I never actually use, and called the alarm company. The hold music was already playing when I heard it. Beep. A faint one, electronic, familiar. I walked slowly to the back hallway, where the second alarm panel is. That's when I saw it. Someone was standing in the hallway. Just standing. Not moving, not talking. Hood up, head slightly tilted. One hand on the keypad. I couldn't see his face, but I saw the screen light up again. He had just rearmed the alarm. He rearmed my alarm. I stood frozen, still holding the knife in my hand, phone pressed to my ear. The person finally turned their head slightly toward me and said, "Calm as anything." I didn't want anyone interrupting us. That voice. I knew that voice. It took a second, but then it clicked. A few months back, I'd hired a technician from the security company to upgrade my system. He'd installed the new panels, walked me through everything, even helped me set the master code. He knew the code. I remember how friendly he was. He had offered to program the code I picked into both panels, said it would save me the hassle. And I, being polite, being trusting, let him. He must have remembered it, maybe even made a copy of the layout. He knew where the cameras were, where the blind spots were. I backed up slowly, still on the phone with customer service, whispering into the receiver. They told me to get out immediately and that they were dispatching police. The man started walking toward me, slow, confident. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't afraid. I turned and ran to the garage door, hit the opener. Nothing. Disabled. I ran upstairs, slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and barricaded it with the dresser. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the knife. I could hear him downstairs, opening drawers, walking like he lived there, like this was his house. The customer service rep stayed on the line, whispering back to me now, like We were both hiding together. Then, tap, tap, tap on the bedroom door. "I remember this room," he said through the wood. "You were on the phone while I installed the panel. You weren't really paying attention to what I was doing." He was right. I hadn't been. I'd been distracted on a work call thinking about dinner, just assuming everything was fine because he had a badge and a branded van. I hadn't watched him close enough. Then he said, "You know, I picked your house for a reason. You're predictable, alone, careful, but not careful enough." I felt tears prick at my eyes. I'd done everything right, everything I was supposed to do. But I let him in once. That was all it took. I held the knife tighter and whispered to the rep, "Where are they? Where are the cops?" She said they were close. Then I heard footsteps outside, sirens, blue and red lights flashing through the window. He must have heard them too because the knocking stopped. Silence. I waited, frozen, not even breathing. Then, crash. Front door. "Sheriff's Department, hands in the air." Screams, scuffling, more crashing. I stayed locked in my room until an officer knocked and called my name. They got him. He hadn't even tried to run. He was still holding the master keypad from the hallway when they tackled him. Turns out, he'd been watching for weeks, driving past the house, noticing when I came home, when I left. He used a generic service ticket to get into my system remotely, timed the alarm to go dead for just long enough to let himself inside. He planned it, start to finish, all because of one moment of misplaced trust. I sleep with the lights on now. New security system, new locks, new everything. But every now and then, I'll be falling asleep and I'll hear that voice in my head again. I didn't want anyone interrupting us, and I remember he knew the code. Every Wednesday, my parents work late. They both picked up extra shifts years ago. It just sort of became the norm. I get off the bus at 3:30, let myself in. For the next few hours, I'd have the house to myself. By 3:45, I'm usually in the shower. After that, dinner. Usually leftovers or something frozen. Then Xbox until I hear the garage door go up around 7:45. Same pattern, every week, like clockwork. I actually liked Wednesdays. It was quiet, predictable, mine, the kind of routine you don't really think twice about until something breaks it. One Wednesday, a few months ago, I got home like usual, but the moment I reached the backyard, I noticed something odd. The side gate, the one that's always shut tight, was wide open, not just cracked, all the way open. I stopped walking. Now, I figured maybe my dad forgot to latch it. He's forgetful like that sometimes. But a weird feeling settled in my gut. Not fear exactly. Not yet. Just a pause, like my body knew before my brain did. I went inside, locked the back door behind me, checked the rooms downstairs. Nothing out of place. So, I went upstairs to start my shower, turned on the water, let it warm up. Then I stepped into the bathroom and stopped, cold. There were footprints on the rug, wet ones. But I hadn't stepped in yet. The water was still running. I hadn't even taken off my shoes. And the prints, they were bare. I just stood there staring at them, like maybe my brain needed time to catch up to what my eyes were seeing. And when it finally hit, when it clicked that someone had just been in there, I ran. No hesitation. No double checking closets. I sprinted across the yard to my neighbor's house and banged on their door. They let me in, called the cops, gave me a blanket and a bottle of water while I tried not to completely fall apart. The police showed up. They searched the house, top to bottom, every room, every cabinet. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No muddy prints outside. No windows cracked. Just nothing. They said maybe I imagined it, that it could have been an old water stain, a leak. But I know what I saw. Those are wet, fresh prints. Someone had been there. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next Wednesday, I didn't go to school. I told my parents I wasn't feeling well. But I wasn't sick. I had a plan. I waited until everyone left. Then I stayed behind and climbed into the attic. It was cramped, dusty, hot, miserable, but I had my old phone with me, fully charged, camera ready. I positioned it through a small vent that looked down into the living room. And I waited. At exactly 3:40 p.m., I remember the timestamp. I heard the back door creak open. Soft footsteps, slow. Not the kind you make when you're in a hurry. The kind you make when you think no one's home. And then I saw him. A man, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes, walked straight into my house with a knife in his hand. He didn't look scared or panicked. He wasn't there to steal anything. He opened the fridge, looked in the bathroom, poked his head into the stairwell, and then he sat on the couch, like he belonged there, like he was waiting. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just kept recording as the man stared at the front door for almost 30 minutes. Then he stood up, stretched, and walked out the same way he came in. When I showed the footage to the police, their tone changed fast. They took the phone, asked me dozens of questions. That night, 2 detectives came to our house. They pulled my parents into another room for over an hour. Later, one of them sat me down and told me this. Over the past year, there had been 3 murders across the city. All teenagers, all killed in their homes, all on Wednesdays. They didn't know what connected them. Different neighborhoods, different circumstances. But now, they had a common thread, routine. This guy had a pattern. He learned his victims' habits, knew when they were alone, knew when to move. And he didn't just kill, he watched. He stalked. They think he'd been watching me for weeks, maybe even months. He knew my schedule, knew I was alone on Wednesdays, and he knew how to get in. If I hadn't noticed that gate, if I hadn't seen those footprints on the rug, if I had come home just 10 minutes later, I would have walked in that house like always, showered, ate dinner, sat on the couch, and I would have never seen it coming. I would have been number 4. Have a true story you never told anyone? I want to hear it. Send your encounter to officialcertdread@gmail.com, and maybe next time your nightmare will be told here.